Welcome, everyone, to Perimenopause Unpacked. We'll be covering perimenopause and what you can do about it, kind of at a foundational level today and over the next 2 days. Hopefully, you walk away with a lot of understanding around this very pivotal time in your life, maybe things that you didn't know or that you were just unsure of, and helped to kind of solidify your understanding of it all. With that, my name is Kelly Vita. I own Empower Her Fitness Batavia, and we really are a studio that is focused on education and empowerment for women around some of the key phases of their life: fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, and beyond. So this kind of fits into not just the movement aspect, but that education and empowerment, so that as you go through again this time in your life, you feel like you have a good understanding of what's happening to you and how you can talk to your health professionals about it. We have a lot to cover today, so it'll go pretty quickly. Each day will be pretty packed with informational. Again, keeping it all at like a 101 foundational level, though. So if you want to go deeper, there's options to do that. But of course, if you have any questions, feel free to come off of mute or throw them in the chat. Kind of starting with some ground rules, though. Not necessarily hard, steadfast rules, but more gentle guideposts to help you really show up over these next few days with intention. And so, not to put pressure on yourself or to focus on perfection, but really to think about exploring what supports you during this phase of your life. So, as we go through the various topics this week, I encourage you to try one new thing. So that may be swapping your morning coffee for like an herbal tea or eating a protein-rich breakfast instead of just skipping breakfast altogether. We're going to be coming up with a lot of great tips and tricks to really help you thrive during perimenopause. Don't try to tackle them all at once. It's really going to be too much if you try that. Instead, pick one or two things that really you feel like you can commit to for the next few days. We also highly encourage you to speak kindly to yourself. So as you feel critical of yourself, really catch that and reframe it. Just give yourself kindness and compassion, especially during this time of your life. You're doing the best that you can with what you know, and that matters. One of the best pieces of advice that I ever received was, imagine the things that you're thinking. Imagine saying them to your daughter or your niece or your best friend. Chances are you wouldn't say that to them, so don't say it to yourself. During this week, I really encourage you to prioritize rest and sleep. So those are kind of two different things. That's allowing yourself to kind of step back from just the day-to-day grind and really give yourself some rest. But then at night, prioritizing 7 to 9 hours of sleep where you can, because quality sleep is going to be foundational to your hormone health and really helping you thrive in this time of your life. It's often the one thing that we sacrifice, whether it's staying up late to watch a TV show or to get some work done, or waking up early to try to fit in a workout or something like that. Really prioritizing sleep is going to be one of the most important things that we can do. I encourage you to find movement throughout your day. This could be just 10-minute walks here or there. Walking after a meal is incredible to helping with digestion as well as blood sugar regulation. So get out there and move. The weather's still pretty nice here in Chicago. So if you can also get some natural sunlight, that's just an added bonus. You don't have to overthink it though. A couple short walks in a day can have greater benefits than spending an hour in the gym. So get out there and move. And then lean into community. We have created this Facebook groups that you can join and ultimately share your resources, your stories, ask questions. Really just we want to make sure that you know that you are not out there alone trying to figure this out by yourself. There are resources and others here to help. So I think it's important that we start any conversation first by defining what perimenopause is. It's not a single moment in time. It really is a process, and it's the body's way of recalibrating. But as you're going through it, the changes can feel really intense, especially when you're not expecting them or they seem to be related to something completely unrelated. Perimenopause means around menopause, and it's typically something that starts in your late 30s, early 40s. It can start, earlier or later than that, but that's kind of the typical time frame in which it starts. It's really the natural hormonal shift before menopause, and menopause is like your 12-month anniversary of going without having a period. If you go for 7 months and then you have a period, you're basically restarting that 12-month clock until you hit menopause. The whole process of perimenopause can last 4 to 10 years. So, as we think about all of the signs, the symptoms, the struggles that we face, that's a really long time to go through it. So, we want to make sure that we can thrive during this time and not necessarily let it take over our lives. Now, you've probably heard of testosterone, estradiol or estrogen, and progesterone. Those are the main kind of reproductive hormones. There are many other hormones that are at play during this time, but these are the three that are really changing and shifting. So it's important that you understand what these changes are and how they impact you and your body, knowing that these shifts are not just in your head. The signs and the symptoms that come along with them are also not something that you're just making up or imagining. Your biochemistry really is going through a recalibration, and it's affecting every single system in your body, even ones that you may not even think of. We'll start talking about estrogen, or as on this chart, there's estradiol. This estrogen really is like an umbrella term for a group of hormones, of which estradiol is the most potent and dominant form. If you go in and work with your medical professional, chances are they may prescribe estradiol to you. Now, this is going to start fluctuating and pretty unpredictably. We can see with that dotted red line that it can spike 1 week, completely crash the next, and sometimes we have no idea where we're at on those peaks and valleys. But estradiol is going to be the star player when it comes to things like regulating your menstrual cycle, supporting bone health, maintaining vaginal and skin tissue, protecting heart and brain function. That's one big one that I want to kind of dig into. In that, estrogen helps keep blood vessels flexible. So, as we think about how this impacts our health, especially post perimenopause and menopause, cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in women over 50. And that's partially because of this loss of estrogen's protective effect and flexibility within the blood vessels. So it's very important that we focus on doing things that protect our heart when that hormone drops. We then think about progesterone, and you'll see that that is the dark green, again with peaks and valleys, and this is going through more or less your menstrual cycle in those reproductive years, and it's pretty steady. But then as we get into perimenopause, it's in steady decline. Progesterone is the hormone that is produced after ovulation, and it's used to stabilize the uterine lining. So it's going to keep that estrogen in check and prevent the lining of your uterus from growing too thick. So as that starts to dip and estrogen is kind of left to go uninhibited, you may find that you have really heavy periods. Maybe they're irregular. Maybe you're not having periods at all because you're not ovulating. Very, very normal, but without ovulation, there's no progesterone. And so that is all to say that you're going to see some changes with your period, whether it's heavier, longer, shorter, not at all. All of those are all very common. Progesterone, though, goes beyond that, and it's also very calming and balancing. So when it starts to decline, you are going to feel those highs and lows of estrogen imbalance really more extreme. So one of the signs and symptoms that we talk a lot about is just like your lack of empathy. You have increased anxiety, irritability, things that maybe you were able to maintain your composure and your calm about previously just go out the window. Completely natural, and that's all related to this decline in progesterone. It also, though, can affect your sleep. So maybe you have trouble now falling asleep or staying asleep. You're waking up around like that 3 to 5 a.m. time frame, and you just have a really hard time getting back to bed. It's also going to uh, more or less leave you feeling off without any clear explanation. Now, one thing that I would recommend, especially as we get into this period of fluctuation and instability, is to cycle track. And so, in that Facebook group, I can provide a resource that is really the ability for you to track when you may be ovulating, when you have your period, and then we can track the days in between. This is really going to help you define those hormonal shifts a little bit more, and they might feel a little less random so that you can make smarter, more informed decisions, whether that is just around how active you are during certain times of the month, what you eat during certain times of the month, or as you go into your doctor visits, you have that clear tracker. It's also great if you're starting to think about hormone replacement therapy, which we'll talk about in just a moment. That last hormone that is worth mentioning is testosterone. And it's not one that we generally think of, but it is a contributor nonetheless. You'll see that in that kind of Kelly green, kind of brighter green line, testosterone is declining slowly, more slowly than any of the other hormones, but it's going to affect our motivation, our libido, and our physical strength. It's often overlooked, but it's vital as we think about its effect on our confidence, our drive, our muscle tone. And as we get into movement, especially, we'll talk about how important the role of muscle is as we age, for our bone health, for just our stability, for maintaining our independence for as long as possible, far past the years of perimenopause and menopause. With that said, I had mentioned hormone replacement therapy. And many women that I talk to, they are thinking about it or their medical professional has brought it up. It's not for everyone. And as we talk about nutrition and movement and some of the other aspects of just self-care in this period of life, bioindividuality is critical. And that means that your body, your experiences, your heredity, it's all very different than anyone else's. It's not going to be the same as your sisters, your best friends, your neighbors. So as you talk about what's working well for them, or, how do you stay in shape? How do you balance things like hot flashes? That doesn't mean that it's going to work the same for you. It may often have the opposite effect. So with that being said, hormone replacement therapy is not for everyone, and it really does require some personalized medical attention so that based on where your levels are, which may not even follow this graph, you're getting the right hormones at the right time. Now, some gynecologists don't have any training, much less excessive training in menopause and perimenopause. So this might be a great time for you to start looking for a new provider, one that is trained in menopause or one that's even focused solely on menopause. I have a few family nurse practitioners in the St. Charles, kind of down to Oswego area. I'm always happy to share my resources, or if you have some, I'd love to hear who you like too. But two things that I want to call out about hormone replacement therapy. There is going to be hormone replacement therapy and bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. Traditional hormone replacement therapy is going to use hormones from synthetic or animal-derived sources, but that bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, that's going to use hormones that are chemically identical to human hormones. They're often plant-derived, and they come from yams or soy or other resources. The interesting thing about that is that one of the things that you may find repeated as you're looking for resources in perimenopause is that soy is your friend and you should be eating more soy. Chances are it's all kind of connected. So, with that, there are pros and cons to everything. Like I said, find a medical professional that really specializes in that and can answer your questions. One thing that one of my favorite resources has said is she often sees women who are estrogen dominant in this time. They're on a lot of supplements or they have like an IUD that's providing estradiol. At that point, she might put you on testosterone and completely ignore any additional estrogen for you. That's all to say that it's not just about taking one or another. You need to know where your levels are and balance based on that with the other hormones that may be deficient. Now, as we think of what is happening in our body in perimenopause, you are probably experiencing signs and symptoms. And this may be this might be a little, yeah, it's not what I want, just a little small, so I'll kind of zoom in there. But chances are you are feeling some of these, and you may go to your medical professional and tell them that you just feel so tired or like your anxiety is off the charts, and they might completely write you off, or they'll say it's completely normal for your age. But that's not what you want to hear. You want help, you want resources. And so the first thing that I want to do is just validate that everything that you're feeling is normal or common in perimenopausal women. Acknowledging that your symptoms are real, they're not in your head. Sometimes even our family can't understand what we're going through, and it's just hard to find that community that really gets you. So what happened was Morphus, the science-backed platform, created this study of over 50,000 women. And they found over 103 signs and symptoms of menopause. Those are counting, so those are by no means all of them. But as we think about being in this phase for 4 to 10 years, it's not worth just tolerating these distressing symptoms. We really need to find help and some relief as we go through, we age, and we hit that menopause. Once you hit menopause, of course, everything does not go away. You may continue to experience these. So again, finding those resources that you can turn to are going to be pivotal as you go through this time. These are the top 10, but I also share the next 16 because they too are often very common. Things like lack of patience, as I mentioned, those night sweats. Things like itchy ears may be one of those symptoms that you kind of write off, like this can't be perimenopause. But that's why this study is so important. And I link it here so that you can see, is what you're feeling a symptom of perimenopause? All right. Now, beyond just these signs and these symptoms, I want to talk about some real concerns as we age, because we need to make sure that we are staying on top of some of those health aspects, like cardiovascular health, as I mentioned before. Many times we notice, one of the first things that we notice is either weight gain or weight redistribution, especially around our midsection. And that's when we start to think, oh, I should really focus on my nutrition or my movement. But there are so many other key health concerns that we need to consider, especially before we talk about nutrition because sometimes food that you eat can make your symptoms better or they can make them worse. Even though they may be healthy, they may not make you feel good. And that goes back to that bioindividuality. And beyond maybe just even tracking your menstrual cycle, I would encourage you to track what you eat and how it makes you feel, because that all can have a huge impact, more or less, on the severity of the symptoms that you feel. So we'll just start with some of those other health concerns. Blood sugar regulation. Perimenopause is associated with insulin resistance. That leads to higher blood sugar levels. That leads to some of that weight gain. And this metabolic change is also increasing the risk of type 2 diabetes and other cardiovascular diseases. So very important that we look to regulate our blood sugar, especially in perimenopause. Chronic inflammation often comes along with that, but also it is related to the decline in estrogen levels. So this can lead to increased production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which contribute to chronic low-grade inflammation. And then this inflammation is linked to various health issues like cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, and cognitive decline. Cognitive function and mood changes, very important as we think about those fluctuating hormone levels and what that means to our neurotransmitter systems. It's going to lead to those mood swings, anxiety, depression. And as we mentioned, that chronic inflammation may contribute to some of that cognitive decline and just an increased risk of other neurodegenerative diseases. Cardiovascular health risks. If you remember me saying that that is the number one cause of death in women over 50. So really focusing on nutrition that promotes strong cardiovascular health is important. And then as we think about bone density, this is not just something that we need to think of later in life. This really is going to be important that we start to think of it now in perimenopause, especially because estrogen is playing a crucial role in maintaining your bone density. As that decreases, so does your bone density. The decline of estrogen during perimenopause is just going to accelerate bone resorption, and that's when the body breaks down and absorbs the tissue from your bones and your teeth back into the bloodstream. It's a natural process, but the risk really is that now and into the later years of our life, that this resorption is outpacing our bone formation. So you might even see that you have special tests that your dentists are doing now, and it all can kind of lead to this decrease in bone mass. As we think about a decrease in bone mass, another piece to that is the risk of fracture, especially when we fall. And as we think about not just the loss of bone density, we need to focus on muscle mass decline, sarcopenia. And this, again, is going to be categorized as muscle mass decline, but also a loss of strength. So these two kind of combined are really critical that we focus on, especially as we think about like strength training and movement now and later in life. These two together can increase your risk of falling, but not just falling, your inability to catch yourself, your increased risk of fracture, and ultimately your loss of independence later in life. This can all be exacerbated by poor nutrition and inactivity. So that's really why we now hop into nutrition. And tomorrow we will talk about movement and just the type of movement. And I call it movement rather than like exercise or working out because there's so much more to staying active than just going to the gym or being part of like a group fitness class or one-on-one training session. So before we get to movement, which is going to be tomorrow, we'll talk about nutrition basics. And we'll talk about kind of the three main pillars of nutrition Of course, you know protein, fat, and carbohydrates, but maybe you don't know how important it is, especially in this time of life. Protein is going to slow the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream, which is going to help our blood sugar spikes and crashes. So, as we think again about that blood sugar regulation, protein is going to be a powerhouse. Adequate protein is going to support insulin sensitivity and ultimately help with insulin resistance. It helps manage our weight and preserve lean muscle mass, which also helps support our heart health. You may find that certain plant-based proteins help to reduce LDL cholesterol. As we think about the loss of tissue, as I mentioned, as like one sign and symptom of perimenopause, protein is going to support repair and regeneration of tissues. So it's going to help to counteract some of just the natural loss related to decline in estrogen, but also help with inflammatory damage. It's essential for maintaining and building that bone density as well as muscle mass. And a higher protein intake is linked to better bone density and muscle preservation, especially as we age. The one other thing that you'll hear me say a couple times this week is that muscles really are receptors for your sugar, your blood sugar, your glucose. And so we want as much muscle as we can to absorb that rather than as our muscle mass declines, less receptors, more sensitivity, and ultimately resistance of insulin. Okay. For protein, aim to consume about a palm-sized portion with each meal. As you think about snacking, cut that in half, so about half of a palm. For your snacks, these can be easy on the go, like beef jerky sticks, or things like Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, edamame, nuts, seeds, hummus. Um, uh, Peanut butter, even some protein-packed whole grains like oats and farro are really good. You see here that you should have about 0.54 to zero point 0.9 grams of protein for every pound of body weight that you have. So chances are you are falling below what you should be aiming for, sometimes far below. And one of the other pieces that I will say about protein is that we really need to aim to get around 30 grams within the first 30 to 60 minutes after waking to help jumpstart our metabolism, help to regulate blood sugar, and just help to really set the foundation to control our appetite all day long. So if you are just grabbing a cup of coffee, I would highly encourage you to eat protein before that or to completely replace your coffee with something like a bone broth or like a warm protein shake or something of that sort. Now, carbohydrates are very important, and oftentimes, as we think about losing weight, we think about cutting carbs or cutting fat. But as you'll see here, they are incredibly important, especially in perimenopause and beyond. So, complex carbohydrates, which are your whole grains, your vegetables, your legumes, these are going to provide steady energy and fiber, which is going to slow digestion and ultimately your glucose absorption. Simple carbs, which we burn through really quickly, are just going to kind of worsen any dysregulation. We want to aim for high fiber, plant-based carbs because these are going to help feed beneficial gut bacteria that we have, which also is going to help reduce any systemic inflammation that we have. Overconsumption of refined carbs are going to actually drive inflammation. So you, again, may feel that after certain meals, within 30, 60 minutes, you feel really good or you feel really bad. I would highly recommend that you track that so you can see what foods are causing you that dysregulation that you may need to back off of, or which foods make you feel really good, and maybe explore other ways that you can eat them. Again, this is all bio-individual, so something that works really well for someone that you know may not work well for you, and vice versa. Now, we also want to think about using carbohydrates to fuel any resistance training that we do. So, tomorrow we're going to talk about the different kinds of movement and training that are going to be beneficial to us. Um, this energy is going to help us more or less to get through those workouts. It's going to help support calcium absorption. And we also need to think about not only just eating carbs, but eating carbs with protein, but then how we can mix it with other vitamin-rich foods, like foods that are rich in vitamin D, ultimately to help with calcium. Some carbohydrates that you might not think of, but that can really help you in this time are fruits such as raspberries, blackberries, kiwis, pears, passion fruits. Those dark berries are also going to be loaded with antioxidants and fiber and phytonutrients. So, really great as we look for ways to help reduce the risk for heart disease. Think about adding more vegetables where you can, those green leafy vegetables like kale or cruciferous veggies. Those are going to actually aid in estrogen metabolism and balance. They also have a good amount of calcium to help improve your bone health and density. Whole grains, we mentioned oats are really great because they have protein in them. Well, they're also a really great complex carbohydrate. Quinoa is another one that's both rich in protein and carbohydrates. And then beans, legumes, those are your lentils, your kidney beans, your chickpeas, and starchy tubers, such as potatoes and sweet potatoes. For carbs, we recommend that you eat a cupped handful. Um, of carbohydrate rich foods at most meals. If you're active, eat more carbs. The last kind of main pillar is going to be around fat. Again, fat and carbohydrates get really a bad rep, but it is going to be really important as we think about that long-term vitality. As you see here, it's really an essential building block of your sex hormones. So you have to eat to produce hormones. So definitely do not skimp on fats, carbohydrates, or proteins. Healthy fats like omega-3s and other monounsaturated fats are going to actually help stabilize your blood sugar by slowing down any gastric emptying, which also helps with any insulin sensitivity. As we think about omega-3s, there are omega-3s and there are omega-6s. And the standard American diet has a 20-to-1 ratio where omega-6s are 20 and omega-3s are at a 1. This really, in an optimal situation, should be 1-to-1. So we want to think about those healthy fats in terms of omega-3s, where we can fit them in our diet rather than fueling our body with omega-6s, which really drive like the inflammatory response in our body. Omega-3s are going to be found in fish, flaxseed, walnuts. I also love chia seeds. I throw them in my water in the morning. They have like a little, tapioca kind of consistency, but I throw a lot of stuff in my water. Actually, I throw ginger and cucumbers and lemon and turmeric and not necessarily all at the same time, but it's a great kind of vehicle for me to get some of these either micro or macronutrients in, especially as I think about how to incorporate them in my day and not necessarily being able to eat all of them in the course of, the three main meals and snacks. Now, your brain is about 60% fat, and that is why you need fat, really, especially as we think about perimenopause and that cognitive decline. We want to make sure that we are really focused on our brain health. Omega-3s are going to support neuron structure. They're going to help with mood regulation. They're going to help with memory. I don't know about you, but some days I cannot remember anything. So really focus on fats and those omega-3s. You'll also see that as you have that imbalance of omega-6s to omega-3s, or even just a deficiency in omega-3s, you may feel a little bit more depressed, or you may have some of that brain fog, kind of what I would classify as cognitive decline. All right. Minimize fats like saturated fats from processed foods, I'm sure, or saturated fats, trans fats, excessive refined vegetable oils, all that we kind of find in the supermarket as like prepackaged, preserved food. We also may find it in a lot of our fried foods. So, really, no surprise that we want to minimize what we eat there and really try to incorporate more of the healthy fats from nuts and seeds, which also include protein, increase our intake of olive oil, whether that's through cooking or like mixing it as a salad dressing, avocados, omega-3s, again from the fish, flax seeds, other supplements, chia seeds, etc. For fats, you want to aim for a serving size about the size of your thumb. A good tip to remember, though, is that after a meal, if you still feel hungry, that is your body telling you that you need to eat more protein. If you just don't feel like satisfied or satiated, that is your body's way of telling you that you need more fat. So, again, listen to how your body's feeling after meals and take that into account for the next meal, either eating more protein, eating more fat, backing off of certain foods, um, whatever it may be. Your response or your signs or symptoms may be a little bit more intense after certain meals, and we want to make sure that we are capturing all of that so we can make those educated and empowered decisions for future meals. Now, you may not get everything out of food, or you may want to look to supplementation. This does not just come in like pill form, it may come in powder form. You may find like the seeds are, actual like little seeds, or flax seeds may be shaved. That's all to say. There are many ways in which these supplements come. I would highly recommend that you talk to your healthcare provider ultimately to make sure that you are taking the right amount of supplements or supplementing where appropriate. Sometimes an excess in supplements can actually have negative impacts. So that's why we don't want to just say, like, oh, probably if I take everything, it'll feel better. That's not always the case. Now, some of these you may not be completely familiar with, so I'll just kind of run through them. Maca being that first one. This is one where at least I buy it in powder form, and I kind of get it by where like your protein powder would be in a grocery store. Also, like the powdered peanut butter is usually over there. That's all to say that this is an aptogenic root, which is really known to help support your mood. It helps with energy. It also possibly helps with libido. So something that I usually put in like my morning protein shake when I have it. It really is masked in a drink, I would say, but to smell it, you would think that maybe it's more off-putting, but really it's hidden in most foods as you mix it. Also think about maca as it helps with just overall hormonal balance and support. Ashwagandha, you may be familiar with. This too is an aptogen that helps regulate cortisol and manage stress. This is one big thing that we'll talk about in our 3-week series. If you join us, is really that cortisol. Just regulation. And so you may see a lot of things now coming out around like cortisol diets or, manage your cortisol, whatever it may be. There is this big spotlight right now on cortisol, and it really is impacting us in every single age. It's impacting fertility, it's, impacting postpartum, and it's really impacting perimenopause because this is kind of working against you when you just have heightened levels of cortisol at all times. Usually you want it when you like need quick energy, but when we just have that sustained stressor, it's going to have really negative impacts. So as we think about ashwagandha in particular and how it helps to regulate cortisol, it also helps to reduce anxiety, support mental clarity, just support stress-related inflammation and really lower that. And then potentially it may impact your blood sugar through just that cortisol control. You'll kind of see if you join us that it is like this never-ending loop of cortisol, blood sugar dysregulation, inflammation, et cetera, et cetera. Again, cortisol has a lot of negative impacts when sustained at high levels for long periods of time. Flax seeds, you may know and incorporate. These are really easy just to kind of sprinkle on your oats or in a smoothie or something of that sort. But they're rich in fiber, they're rich in omega-3s, and they can help lower LDL cholesterol, stabilize blood sugar with that fiber. They're anti-inflammatory. And they may even help support some brain health via the healthy fats. Chia seeds I kind of talked about already, and I won't necessarily go in detail in everything, but I will talk about magnesium. It comes in multiple different types. So you may see like citrate or glycinate. Those are maybe the ones that are preferred. Again, talk to your healthcare provider. But this is going to help support insulin sensitivity, blood sugar regulation. It actually aids in relaxation and sleep. So if you take baths, it's nice to have Epsom salt baths. That's kind of like you're bathing in magnesium, especially before bed, to really help aid in relaxation. Magnesium is also necessary for bone formation and muscle contraction. So chances are you may be on a magnesium supplement or you may look to take that. That's one where it comes in so many different forms. It's, like I said, available for you in a bath or in a spray, in creams. It's in pill form. It's in powder form, just so many different ways. But so many people are usually deficient, so you need to supplement in some way. Um, the other one that I'll call out is berberine. This is a plant compound and it's often compared to metformin for blood sugar control. So it helps really support insulin sensitivity. It helps improve lipid profiles and it has an antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties. So this may be something that you would look to experiment taking in like a pill form. That's usually how I found it before meals. I will say that this can interact with medications in maybe a negative way. So you want to make sure that you use that under the guidance of a medical professional. Okay. The other thing that I would recommend beyond just the pillars of food and maybe some supplementation is experimenting with spices. And so, as we think about spices, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but here really is some spices that you may have in your cabinet already that are going to help with blood sugar regulation, inflammation reduction, cardiovascular health, even cognitive support, muscle and bone preservation. Just kind of going down the list and hitting a few, especially some that you may be like, oh, I wonder why that's on there. Cinnamon actually is great at helping regulate blood sugar and insulin sensitivity. It adds an element of sweetness to what you're drinking without adding any sugar or spiking your blood sugar. I also will just heat up some water and put a few sticks of cinnamon in. It's a really great drink, not only taste-wise, but with the health benefits that it has related to anti-inflammatory properties, improving insulin function, and even potentially reducing triglycerides. Cayenne pepper, this is one where you may be like, oh, that's a little bit spicy, but one that I add in my water in the morning, and it really like gives it a little kick, but I would not say overpowers the water at all. This is going to actually support your metabolism and your circulation, and that's why I like taking it in the morning, because it kind of wakes up your body functions. It also has strong anti-inflammatory effects, helps improve blood flow, and also may help with blood pressure. It may also help support appetite control. Again, it may work a little bit different for everyone, but something that you can try. If you feel like maybe some symptoms like hot flashes are a little worse after eating hot food, that would probably be a cue that cayenne pepper's not your friend. All bio-individual, as I've mentioned many times before. Turmeric is another one that I really like adding to water. It just adds a little bit of a flavor, but again, I wouldn't say it's off-putting. It's great because it helps improve memory, reduces any brain inflammation. It's a strong anti-inflammatory and antioxidant. And it may help to lower blood pressure and insulin resistance. The other piece with turmeric though, is that it actually is aided by black pepper. So if you have turmeric, I would also recommend that you incorporate a little black pepper. It helps with absorption. Black pepper, beyond just the turmeric, also enhances nutrient absorption as we think about some B vitamins. So that is just something that you may think of as like a nice spice, but actually has some some great health benefits as well. Nutmeg, I'll call out. It's a warming spice, especially as we get into kind of the pumpkin spice season. This is maybe one that you want to add into your coffee or into some sort of warm, earthy drink that you have. It has anti-inflammatory and actually sedative properties. It's calming. It may help aid sleep, reduce anxiety. I would say though that this is one that you should use in moderation because high doses can actually be toxic. The other piece that I found just personally is that by adding just a few sprinkles into my morning protein drink has actually helped decrease hair loss. So there are properties that kind of tie back to that hair health. So maybe something that you want to try for one of those symptoms. I'll just talk about my morning protein drink really quickly because I keep like calling back to it, but that's where I put things like maca and cocoa. I have just a chocolate protein powder. I put in collagen powder. I use almond milk. I heat up the almond milk and then I mix everything else together. I'll add a splash of cinnamon, a splash of nutmeg. And ultimately, like that will fuel me for many hours. It's probably about 35 to 40 grams of protein just because of the protein shake mix, the collagen, and the almond milk. But definitely something that, you could potentially look to experiment with, as it's just a really nice way to get in all of your protein, but also some of these nutrients and spices. Mint is very important as we think about perimenopause, maybe ingested or just used via a essential oil. Mint helps soothe digestion and may help support hormone balance. It also aids with bloating and digestive discomfort. So I almost always have a cup of mint tea with me, and I usually drink that in the morning to help with any digestive issues and just some of the regulation as well. And right, you might find like mint gum is helpful to suppress any um, uh, like cravings that you have. Just think about incorporating mint a little bit more into your diet with drinks or how you eat it. Or as I mentioned, that essential oil, really great for relief with hot flashes, either on the back of your neck or on your feet. Okay. Um, the last one that I'll probably talk about is that fenugreek, which helps to balance blood sugar, may help to reduce help to reduce hot flashes, and it's traditionally used for mood and libido. So a lot of great ways in which you can experiment with food. It definitely does not have to be chicken breast and broccoli. In many cases, that would be a detriment to you. Really experiment with flavors and how you can create really great uh, like sautés or dressings or the like, with a mix of these spices and olive oil and, the other aspects that we talked about for well-rounded nutrition in perimenopause. I'll leave you with some do's and don'ts. And this is really just to remind you about that concept of bioindividuality, where we all have those unique backgrounds, environments, and stressors, and diets. There's so many different ways in which we are different from the next person. So really think about how these foods affect you and which ones, again, work well for you and which ones don't. Um, that is really all to say that I do have quite a few do's and don'ts as we think about bioindividuality as well. So, whenever you are eating foods, do prioritize whole foods. So, emphasize things like fruits and vegetables and whole grains, lean proteins, nuts, seeds, potentially even eating them almost as they come out of the ground. Do increase calcium and vitamin D where possible, whether that is in foods like leafy green vegetables, fatty fish, all of this really to help support bone health. If you like mushrooms, mushrooms are a great food to eat, but to get a little bit more vitamin D, one tip I've heard is to put them on a windowsill or in direct sunlight for 20 minutes or so, and that'll increase the vitamin D that they have. Pretty cool, huh? Include phytoestrogens, so those flax seeds, soy products, legumes, all of that to more or less help you balance your estrogen levels naturally. We talked about those soy products often being kind of part of bioindividual hormone replacement therapy. Maybe try eating like edamames or other soy protein. See how you feel on that. Focus on protein at every meal, especially in the morning, 30 to 60 minutes after waking. Do stay hydrated. This is great for your hormonal changes, just affecting hydration in your skin and your tissues. Really, we talk about aiming for 8 glasses of water a day. As much as you can, I would recommend that you drink. As I mentioned, I often kind of spice it up with things like turmeric or chia seeds or cucumber or lemon, mint. There are so many ways in which you can get away from like the boring drain of just regular water and ultimately consume as much water, but also bring in some of those extra nutrients along the way. Do moderate caffeine and alcohol. Both of these can really worsen things like hot flashes and sleep issues, mood swings. If you find that you're waking up at a certain time every night, that may be just your way of telling you that you're having caffeine too late in the day or you've consumed too much alcohol. Again, I would recommend that log so you can see how you feel after certain food. Do support gut health, including things like probiotics, whether those are supplemented or in food form, like yogurt, fermented food. This all helps aid digestion and ultimately your hormone metabolism. Limit added sugars, refined carbs, as we kind of talked about, some of those trans fats and unsaturated fats. And then manage portion sizes, eating mindfully. I know I am a huge um, uh, I do this all the time. Sorry, I'm not thinking today. It's cognitive decline, right? But like I will have my next forkful kind of queued up as I'm still chewing. It's nice to also kind of slow down as we eat. That not only helps us to kind of regulate how we feel and how full we are, but also just, enjoy our food and do it mindfully. This also helps metabolism and and our potential for weight gain. And then do consider supplements. Talk to your healthcare providers where appropriate. Now, the don'ts are just as important. I know we talked about just having coffee for breakfast and that really not being ideal. Skipping that balanced morning meal and only having coffee is going to spike those cortisol levels. It's going to worsen anxiety, disrupt blood sugar balance, lead to energy crashes, potential overeating the rest of the day. So really try to get that protein in. Not to say you can't have coffee in the morning, just I would highly recommend that you eat some protein first. Don't skip meals regularly. This can worsen mood swings, fatigue, blood sugar instability. Intermittent fasting can be good, but it isn't for everyone and should really only be done in certain circumstances. We won't get into that here, but something that you should think about. If you're trying it and it's not working for you, it's not for everyone. Don't feel bad. Speak kindly to yourself. Don't follow extreme or restrictive diets. This can lead to nutrient deficiencies and ultimately have negative impacts on bone density, muscle mass, blood sugar regulation, so many of the things that we talked about in the why, you should eat protein, carbs, and fats. Don't ignore fiber intake. This is very important. Low fiber can actually slow digestion and worsen constipation. And that's going to be really more common as hormone levels fluctuate. Don't forget to track symptoms so that you really understand your dietary triggers, what's causing your hot flashes or what's potentially causing your insomnia. Can we trace it back to the root ultimately of food? Or tomorrow we'll talk about activity. Don't ignore food sensitivities or intolerances, bloating, fatigue, mood changes. They're all linked to specific foods that you may be eating, and perimenopause may be amplifying those symptoms. So don't just continue to work through it. Really listen to your body and what it's telling you. Don't overlook emotional eating patterns that you may turn to for things like stress reduction. If you do turn to food, maybe think about like healthy snack alternatives or go for a walk, get out in sunshine, maybe something that is not food related to help you cope. Don't underestimate the importance of stress management and sleep. These both affect metabolism, hunger hormones like cortisol, and overall well-being. Don't eat too late at night. Late meals really can interfere with your sleep quality. It can interfere with your blood sugar regulation. And don't depend solely on supplements instead of eating real food. They can help, but they can't fully replace the nutrients and protective compounds that you find in whole foods. All right, so I know we are right at time. We have a lot more to talk about this week around movement, sleep and stress reduction, just other important topics like mental health and pelvic floor health. So I hope that you will join me over the next 2 days. I've talked about a 3-week series a couple times that really is to go beyond these foundational aspects so that we can really get into using nutrition and movement to help beat the bloat. If you feel like weight has redistributed during this time or you just don't feel like yourself, we'll talk about kind of those real solutions for midlife weight struggles. We're bringing in a family nurse practitioner to talk about thyroid health, especially in perimenopause. So that we can find the balance, energy, and wellness during this time. And then we have a pelvic floor therapist coming to talk about periods, prolapse, and sex and perimenopause. Things may all be very different, but that doesn't mean that it has to be that way forever or that there aren't ways in which you can find immediate relief. Okay, I leave you with those final reminders, things that you should do this week. Try one new thing, speak kindly to yourself. If you wouldn't say it to your daughter or your niece or your best friend, don't say it to yourself. Prioritize rest and sleep where possible. Move as much during the day and lean into the community. I hope that you have found this to be helpful. Sorry, there's often so much to share that I go really fast, but join us on the Facebook group and ask any questions, find other resources. And if you think that this might be helpful for someone else in your circle, please do invite them for the next 2 days. With that, I am going to say thank you so much for joining me. I am Kelly from Empower Her Fitness Batavia. It has been a great afternoon, kind of just talking about some of these foundational aspects and hopefully giving you some education, empowerment, and maybe even some hope for you as you enter this time of transition. Thank you so much again, and I will talk to you soon.